This week, we talk about a new guide that explores every single campground in the National Park Service system, plus your top Googled RV questions. This is RV Miles. This summer, LL Bean invites you to simply step outside and enjoy the fresh air and sunshine. We'll be your guide with tips and advice to get more out of every moment outdoors. Here's one. On your next camping trip, turn a headlamp into a lantern in 5 seconds. Strap the headlamp around an empty clear water bottle or milk jug and turn it on. The soft white light will brighten up a tent. For more fun ideas, easy how-tos, and inspiring stories, visit llbean.com/guide. Welcome to episode 244 of RV Miles. I'm Jason.
And I'm Abby, and we are two full-time travelers who, along with our three boys, Jack, Ethan, and Henry, have been crisscrossing North America on one epic road trip since 2016. Here at RV Miles, we talk all things RV and outdoors, from travel destinations to industry news, our national parks, and so much more.
And we're going to kick off the show this week with some RV questions that people have. These are actually some of the top things that come up when you Google, why do RVs?
So you just go to Google and you say, why do RV? And this is what you're going to get. And the first one cracks me up because we all ask it. Why do RV slides have carpet?
And there's a really good reason for that, actually.
Is there?
And it's actually a problem that's been affecting the industry since they've started to remove carpet from slides. So slides have carpet, and it's annoying because, you know, you don't want carpet under your kitchen dinette where food gets into it, right?
Not so much.
But the reason that big slides especially have carpet is so that they can put a carpet layer down on the floor and then a carpet layer on the slide, and those two layers of carpet overlap each other and nothing gets under there. You don't have dirt and Legos and things that get under there that then up scraping up the floor and messing with the mechanics of the slide. Plus, that creates a barrier that keeps bugs and air and water and animals out.
You know, that's the one big difference between when we had the trailer that had the big kitchen slide with carpet and now here in the Sabre where we have the big kitchen slide with no carpet, is that before every single travel day, I have to make sure that I look underneath our slide here in the kitchen because that gap is just enough between the slide and the floor that things like you mentioned, Legos, pebbles, any tiny little piece, even food, hard food, anything that gets under there has the potential to damage the floor as you're bringing that slide in. So I always have to make sure I check underneath there and then run something under there to get all of the gunk out.
Yeah, and so this is something that people want. They don't want carpet in their slides, and the RV industry knows this because it's the top Googled thing, right? So they've been pulling them out, and they've had to come up with other solutions. So sometimes you'll see like vinyl flooring that is just flappy and overlaps. Sometimes you'll see a step up into the slide, like what we have in order to give them room to put a seal under there. So there are different ways that they're dealing with that, but that's the main reason why you may have an RV with no carpet anywhere in it, but just in your big slide.
So let's pick another one here from the Why Do RV list. And how about why do RV refrigerators catch fire? People would really like to know why this is happening.
RV fires are often caused by the fridge, and in a lot of RVs, it's the propane/electric fridge where there's actually a burner back there that lights things. But it's not necessarily that burner that is causing fires. It's often an electrical cause. But the biggest thing is when you have a fridge like that works off of absorption, which means they've got to heat something in order to cool something, right? That's how the gas electric fridges work. They have to be very well vented, and that vented compartment gets filled with all kinds of gunk and dust and dirt and bugs and nests and stuff, and people aren't very good at cleaning those out. Now, I don't want to put all the blame on owners, but that is such an important thing for you to do on a very regular basis is clean out the back of that fridge compartment, check the roof vent and make sure the roof vent is clear because that heat has got to go somewhere. Compressor fridges, like we have a DC compressor fridge where you might have a 110 volt residential fridge, they don't put as much heat out. So there's less of an issue in fridge fires coming from them.
All right, so I have to go to this one because it made me smile when I read it, and that is, why do RVs cost so much? Why do RVs cost so much?
My answer to that is my answer to everything. Why anybody says why something costs so much, it's because people are willing to pay that much.
Well, yes, that I would say yes. I also think there's a wide range of how much RVs cost, just as there's a wide range of how much a house costs or a car costs, how much clothes cost. It's going to depend upon the quality, the material used, the size, the weight, what it can do. Are you hauling toys in it? Do you want, that onboard generator or that extra fuel tank in your, toy hauler and all of these things? And the more you want, the more it's going to cost.
They're hand-built small houses. I mean, it just really comes down to that. They don't have the ability. There's not the scale to do robotic assembly lines that save labor costs and that sort of stuff that the automobile industry has. And, obviously the price of everything is going up.
Yeah, that's not to say that maybe the inflation has risen a little bit in the last 2 years in the RV industry. But, again, it's just like anything you buy, you have to buy within your set budget, within your means, and then go out and look at what's available out there. I mean, the difference in some respects to buying a $150,000 house in one area versus buying a $150,000 house in another area is huge. The same could be said for an RV. Dealerships, we found our trailer for much cheaper than what it was being sold at where we bought it. And we took that to them and said, hey, it's not too far for us to drive to go get it over here. Do you want to honor this?
And a lot of it continues to be a scarcity thing. There are certainly a lot more RVs on dealership lots now, but the luxury brands, let's put it that way, still, and motorhomes in particular, still lots of waits for, still lots of difficulties getting them. The manufacturers were able to replenish the travel trailers pretty quickly, but there's still if you want a high-end brand, it's a little bit harder to find exactly what you want. So scarcity drives up the cost.
Here's another one. I would not have thought that this would be in what is this looks like the top 10 searchable top searches on Google. And that is, why do RVs have small tires?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I've personally never heard anyone ask us or comment on tire size. Now, certainly we hear a lot of tire quality, but we don't really hear anything about the size of tires. I'm not quite sure what size people want on this. Are they looking for big off-road?
Yeah.
I can't imagine taking what we have on the Tremor and putting it on the Sabre.
Now,
I know it exists, but I can't imagine it being on the Sabre. Can you?
No, but they size the tire based on the axle and how much weight it needs to carry and what that tire what that manufacturer specs, and generally they're putting the tire that is the lowest common denominator that they need to put on there.
I wonder if that's what this really means, is more about what the tire can handle as opposed to the actual size of the tire.
Yeah. I mean, and you'll see lots of people, including us, if you travel a lot with your RV, it's often worth, if you have a trailer specifically, upgrading to a better load rating tire. Especially if you're going to fill it up to the max cargo carrying capacity and travel 10,000 miles or more a year on it, it's definitely worth upgrading to a higher load rating tire.
One more?
Sure.
Okay, one more. Why do RVs have ladders?
Well, so you can get to the roof.
Or so you can put your poop wagon on the back
you
or a
can hang
bike
stuff
or
off it,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I mean, we've talked a little bit about this though, that not all RVs with ladders mean that your roof is walkable though. And
Yes, and
that's
vice versa. Just because
yes.
you don't have a ladder doesn't mean you can't walk on your roof.
Yeah, so the ladder thing, I think sometimes can be a little deceptive because of that fact right there. You could have a ladder, but you could have a roof that you shouldn't be walking on. So that ladder kind of just becomes an extra place for storage.
You're usually going to find that in like a small Class B
Yes.
camper van that there's a ladder, but you're not supposed to walk on the roof. But, the issue really at hand here is that all RV roofs need to be inspected regularly. The seals need to be inspected and fixed. It's you should be doing it. I suggest quarterly. I
Yeah.
suggest every 3 months you getting up there doing that. And your warranty from your manufacturer is going to say it's something like 6 months or quarterly that you need to be getting up there and inspecting those and replacing any sealant that's gone bad, because it's not the roof material that's going to cause leaks. It's the penetrations in the roof. It's the fans, the air conditioners, the vents, all that sort of stuff. And you got to check those seals.
Yeah, and if you're kind of wondering what Jason means there, we have a really short reel on this subject, and I will link to it in the show notes as well as in the description for this episode's video.
Okay. I think it is time to move on. We're going to take a break.
Yes.
And when we come back, I did an interview a few days ago with Kurt Repanshek of National Parks Traveler, which is such a great publication online that is a nonprofit. And they've gone through and made a PDF digital book that covers every National Park Service campground in a very, very, very convenient way. And Kurt and I talked for a very long time, not just about their book, but about the state of national park campgrounds and campgrounds in and around national parks across the country, because there are some challenges, as we all know, going on with that. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have my interview with Kurt Repanshek.
Be right back.
Chances are you've seen them on the road. That's because Blue Ox has been designing and manufacturing some of the best towing products in the industry. Blue Ox is everywhere: highways, campgrounds, anywhere you find people traveling in the great outdoors. Blue Ox produces award-winning tow bars and base plates, plus a full line of weight-distributing hitches and a new lineup of adjustable ball mounts. With Blue Ox, towing doesn't have to be a drag. To learn more about how Blue Ox can make your travel adventures even more stress-free, visit blueox.com.
My guest today is Kurt Repanshek, veteran journalist and the founder and editor-in-chief of the nonprofit National Parks Traveler, as well as the host of the wonderful National Parks Traveler podcast. Kurt has spearheaded the creation of a new guide for RVers visiting national parks entitled The Essential RVing Guide to the National Parks. Kurt, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jason. Great to join you today.
So let's begin in the world of traveling national parks. The National Park Service is one of the biggest operator of campgrounds, right?
They're up there, yeah, for sure.
We certainly like to spend lots of time on federal land, not just national parks. But we've talked extensively on the show about how the National Park Service isn't just the 63 national parks, but it's also the national monuments and all that. And the system of national park campgrounds is challenging to RVers in a way that is maybe a little bit different from private campgrounds, and that there are all sorts of different size and height and weight limitations, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the bulk of the national park campgrounds, probably date back to the 1950s. I can't think of when a new campground was added to the park system. From time to time, they might reconfigure them a little bit. I know over at Great Basin National Park in Nevada, they're working on, I think, adding a few more RV spaces. But overall, the footprints haven't really radically changed in probably half a century.
And that's really incredible right now, as RVing is going through this big boom phase, and really has been for some time now, at least 5-6 years, not just COVID related, but it's really increased a lot recently. And we've seen lots of investment going into private campgrounds, or new campgrounds being built across the country in the private sector. But things happen a little bit slower on public lands, and the purpose isn't to sort of bring in dollars and get people into campgrounds, right?
Not at all, not at all. And I think that's where the difference is. I mean, obviously, the private campgrounds outside the national parks. I mean, they're out there to monetize their investment, which is perfectly fine. And so they can be a little bit more responsive. They want to be a little bit more responsive to the changes in the RV world. I mean, you think about the size of the RVs 50 years ago, and you think of the ones that are rolling off the lots today. I mean, there's a huge difference. And of course, the technology that we have today, everybody wants to, look at their phone or stream in Apple Music or, whatever, wherever they are. And the national parks weren't designed for that. And I guess, the discussion that needs to be have is a philosophical one. I mean, where do you want the national parks to go? Do you want the national parks to match the private industry step for step? I don't think so. And maybe I'm just getting long in tooth, but, I think still the bulk of America hopefully wants to go to the national parks to enjoy nature foremost. And, they can do without their technological amenities and their extra long RVs for a few days.
In fact, I think a lot of times when the discussion comes up in a local region, whether it be a national park, a state park, or what have you, when the conversation about a new campground comes up, there's often a lot of pushback because it might compete with private campgrounds, and it might sort of bring down the rates at private campgrounds and hurt those businesses who are trying to make money. So I think there's sort of there's a balance that is often trying to be struck by our politicians that doesn't really happen in a convenient way, as most politics don't. But what is your sense of the current situation at national park campgrounds in this time of really busy focus on camping and outdoor recreation and RVing?
Well, things are really crowded, as you well know, Jason. There's obviously more demand than there's availability, and the federal government has struggled to figure out how to deal with that availability. I mean, they've come out with recreation.gov as the be all and end all solution to reserving your national park or your national forest or your BLM campground spot. And it's a good idea, but in today's world, I don't think it works, because unless you have a fiber optic cable connected to your computer, you're always going to be lagging behind when it comes time to click that button to reserve. I mean, we've got dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of comments on the Traveler over the years of people complaining that recreation.gov must be rigged. There must be bots out there that are snagging the campgrounds because I clicked at 8 o'clock in 1 second or 8 o'clock in 2 seconds and campground's full. How can that be? Week after week, month after month, year after year. So it's a good idea, but I just don't think it's equitable across the board.
I think one of the challenges too is that the campgrounds in different places that are listed on recreation.gov might release their site availability at different times. There's no sort of one way that the National Park Service does it. You might have one campground that releases everything on January 1 that does rolling 6 weeks.
Yeah. And one of the things they're trying to do is placate the locals, so to speak, because, people who live in a gateway towns or gateway communities or a county away, a half hour away, they might not decide until Wednesday that they want to go camping in a national park on Friday or Saturday. And so the folks at recreation.gov took that into consideration and have given some of the national parks or all of the national parks the freedom to hold back sites for the first come, first serve. But, it's interesting because I was down in Colorado last weekend, Rocky Mountain National Park, and we actually stayed in a Forest Service campground right adjacent to Rocky Mountain because all the national park sites were full. And I was talking to the campground host, and I said, one of the problems I keep hearing about is that people will reserve a site via recreation.gov, and it will show that all the sites are full. And, people will show up and drive through and see a bunch of vacant sites. What's the deal with that? And she told me that they have to hold a site for 24 hours before they can, release it to whoever walks up and says, hey, do you have any open sites? Which that kind of surprised me. I didn't think it was a 24-hour window that you have to show up past the day that you reserved it for. If you reserved it for 3 days, she actually was able to get in contact with the individual that had reserved it. And there was a family issue where I think one of the children was sick. And so that put them behind. But it just seems kind of interesting, to put it mildly, that they would hold a site vacant for 24 hours to see if the party was going to show up.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of RVers. So on the flip side of this, I've talked to a lot of RVers who've said, and I'm not a fan of this practice by any means, that they'll book a couple days before and a couple days after they plan on being at a certain location in order to have some flexibility in case something happens on their journey and it takes them longer to get there or less time to get there, what have you. Or perhaps they might book an extra day at the end because they don't want to leave until 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. And they might leave early in the evening. I think there's sort of a lot of that going on. And then there's the affordability of some sites, especially if you have sort of the half off rate that you get as a senior or person with a disability. And, you might be paying $12 a night for a campground. And I think a lot of people that have the wherewithal to do so might go in and book a lot of weekends or weeks that they haven't asked off for work yet, or they have no idea whether they're going to be available, but they just know all of these sites are going to go away. So I need to book them right now. And they might forget to release them. They might not do it until last minute.
Yeah, I've heard about that. And speaking as a senior, I think I deserve that half off rate.
I think you do too.
Seriously, though, I mean, a lot of the rates are incredibly affordable. I mean, when you see somebody pull into a campground, whether it's a national park campground or a private campground or a Forest Service or BLM campground, driving a $300,000 or $400,000 RV, and they're paying $12 a night, there's something wrong with that. I'm sorry. I know they've paid their dues like the rest of taxpayers out there, and I don't know how to make it equitable. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, do you charge 1% of the vehicle's worth? I don't know. What would you suggest?
It's very tough because that $300,000 Class A is that to one person, and then 8 years later it's a $20,000 home to somebody with limited income. And so you have no idea, and there's just no way to make that I can think of equitable. And unfortunately, the affordable prices make it easier for people to just be a little bit looser with how they book these sites. And I think a big part of it is just really encouraging people to only book what they need, to cancel well in advance of not showing up. I'm guessing I would be curious to what your sense of this is, but I think as you all were researching the book, I would imagine that you've found that there are fewer and fewer campgrounds in the system that are first come, first serve. And it seems like most of them are going to booking online through recreation.gov.
Yeah, they are. And it's kind of disconcerting in some aspects. And I say that because Rocky Mountain National Park used to have a wonderful system for reserving backcountry sites. If you're backpacking in and you want to spend a couple nights in the backcountry, they had a great system where you could see online, real time, what sites were available, which sites weren't available, and you could go from there. And then they were forced to go to recreation.gov, and Yellowstone was forced to go to recreation.gov. And it's just, it's not a level playing field, and it's very unfortunate. More and more sites are going into the rental pool, so to speak, and fewer are in the first come, first serve. And I don't know I really don't know what the answer is. I mean, I'm glad I'm not a Park Service manager, but there are some problems with recreation.gov. But here's another issue, Jason, that I see, and I'd be curious on your thoughts. The Park Service recently came out with what they call their 21st century vision for campgrounds in the national park system. And one thing it didn't seem to address too well, and I'm not sure how you could go backwards with that in terms of, applying that document to a campground that's been around for 50 years. It seems that the campgrounds shoehorn people in for the most part. I mean, the Madison campground up in Yellowstone, you're shoulder to shoulder, site to site. I was in Iowa during my recent road odyssey, and I went to a state park there, and it's like you could reach out your window and touch the RV next to you. And I really question, and even the Forest Service site I saw in Colorado last weekend, is that the way we want to camp? I mean, I understand we're trying to make as many sites available because there's a lot of people that want to enjoy camping in the outdoors. But is that really enjoyment when you're so close to each other? And in the case of the Madison campground, I mean, everybody seemed to want to have their own little campfire. And I ran into the same thing in Capitol Reef National Park. And so you get this haze of smoke just wafting through the campground, which isn't healthy, and a lot of people don't like it. But I just wonder if the 21st century vision for campgrounds in the national park system should have been a little more grand in terms of, we need to have a minimum of X amount of space between the campsites. And we have to appreciate that wood smoke is not the healthiest for human consumption and can lead to forest fires. And maybe we got to come up with maybe a propane fire ring at campgrounds. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just two things in terms of the fires. I love a good campfire, but I have no issue with when the campgrounds don't allow fires. I mean, I get that a lot of people want to cook that way, and it's a nice thing to be able to do in the evening and sit around. But this day and age, with the forest fire problem that we have right now, and 85% of forest fires being human caused, and a lot of them from campers, I have no issue with not having a campfire. But in terms of being close, I don't mind. I think there are ways to do it, and I get that some of the busiest parks they need spaces for people, but there are ways to do it that allow for you to sort of feel like you have separation from your neighbor. That's a challenge for the National Park Service because they're trying to keep the campground as natural as possible. And a lot of that is usually done with landscaping. And that's something that they probably, would frown upon doing a bunch of landscaping in a campground. But I feel like you're already turning the space into a campground. You're already putting pavement down and dropping in electrical boxes and stuff like that. Why not do some landscaping with plants that are indigenous to the area and all that sort of stuff, and trees? I think there are ways to sort of think about that, and I think that was missing from that plan, a way to sort of create separation for people. And then I think looking at the visitation of certain places, and if there's not a need to sort of pack people in, well, then let's not. But part of it is finding spaces to create new campgrounds, and that's hard for the National Park Service to do, again, because they're trying to protect the land. But I think there are a lot of the very big national parks still have lots of spaces that aren't really natural wonders to be protected. There are utilitarian pieces of land that are still available to them that I think it would be good for the Park Service to build some new, more modern campgrounds on. What I loved about that plan, actually, when I read through it, I was sort of surprised at how a lot of it was talking about keeping the campgrounds natural and sort of really focusing on different abilities and the different ways that people like to camp. So, they're talking about hammock camping and bicycle camping and all that sort of stuff. And I think that kind of thinking was great. but there just needed to be more of it, and something, that bigger ways of thinking about how we can do this. How can we put in campgrounds into sites that aren't big natural places? I mean, wouldn't it be great if there was a couple campsites at the Gateway Arch, 3, 4, 5 campsites that you could camp right downtown in Missouri on. I think there are different ways to think about approaching campgrounds that don't have to be sort of the typical what I'm sitting in right now. The 10 feet away from me, it's a great little county park, but 10 feet away from me, the next RVer.
Yeah, I was at Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve on my road trip, and it's roughly 11,000 acres, and there's not a campground there. And part of that reason is the bulk of the acreage is owned by the Nature Conservancy, and they want to manage it for nature, which is understandable. It's kind of a shame. I don't know where the nearest campground is. I stayed in Emporia, Kansas, and it was about a 20-mile drive from there to Tallgrass Prairie, which is a beautiful, beautiful unit of the park system. One thing that we're concentrating on this year at the National Parks Traveler is looking at the overlooked gems of the park system. And Tallgrass Prairie is really one of them for a variety of reasons, whether you want to go look at the beautiful wildflowers in the Tallgrass Prairie that can grow to 6 foot tall by the end of the summer, or you want to look at the bison herd that they have there, or you want to learn about 19th century ranching history in the place that Stephen Jones and his wife built there, and the cattle empire they started. But anyway, there probably are some places in the national park system where you could expand camping. It'd be great to have a place for bicycle campers, just bicycle campers. But if you're going to do that in places like Yellowstone, you got to widen those roads. You take your life in your hands, I think, when you're riding a bicycle on the Grand Loop Road.
I don't know that I could do that. The cars being one thing, the bison being the other. Though I don't know that I could even be on a motorcycle out there. You get stuck in a bison jam and you stop and you're on a bike. That would frighten me a little bit. It's a challenge all around, and I think part of it too is not just the National Park Service. It's working within the national forests where there's a little bit more flexibility, where a lot of them are butted up right against national parks, and building more convenient access. I like a lot of what the national forests are doing in some situation where they have problems with the overabundance of people trying to do some wild camping, boondocking right now, where they're starting to do sort of reservable boondocking sites. And that sounds terrible to a lot of people, but there is an element of that I like, where it's like, you want to overnight at this roadside pull off. Here's a little document that says what you can and what you can't do, and you're going to reserve it, and you can only reserve it for a night or two. Maybe there's a level of that to happen in some national parks where they have the ability to let somebody, overnight in their parking lot where there's not a campground or something like that. I think maybe there's possibilities of that at places like Petrified Forest, where there's a decent parking lot. Maybe they could give people an overnight permit to stay in the parking lot. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been to the campground at Guadalupe Mountains National Park. Their campground, their RV campground is literally a big pavement parking lot, right? Where you pay they do have like a bathhouse that you can use, and there are challenges that come with that then too. Then people don't use it properly. They might dump their black water on the ground and stuff like that. So I don't envy the National Park Service and sort of thinking these problems through.
No, not at all, because, pick a problem. Camping's a problem. What about overcrowding in the parks in general? I mean, if you're going to let people camp overnight in the Old Faithful Inn parking lot, how many more people is that going to bring into the park? And there's already a problem with too many people, not just in Yellowstone, but you could argue there's too many in Arches, in Zion, in Acadia, Great Smoky Mountains, and on and on and on. I hate to say it, but I think they might have to move to a reservation system during the height of the park or the summer season. And the problem with that, of course, goes back to the problem with recreation.gov. I mean, how do you come up with an equitable reservation system? And well, some people might say, well, get a room in the lodge. And with the Park Service philosophy that we can't undercut the gateway towns, a motel room basically in Yellowstone is $300 a night. And sure, you're in the world's first national park, but how equitable is that when you're looking across all segments of the economy?
Well, we do have within the national park system all of these campgrounds that are ran by concessionaires, some of the very most popular campgrounds out there that are ran by concessionaires that are not available on recreation.gov. And I think this is a good good place to transition talking about the book, because you can't go on recreation.gov and get information about all of the campgrounds in the national park system. You need to know about the ones that are run by concessionaires too, which are not available on that site. So you've created a book that is a great resource, very simple, intuitive resource for going through all of the campgrounds in the National Park Service system with a sort of list of the things they have and the things they don't, how to book, all that sort of stuff. So what were you sort of setting out to solve when you guys put together the Essential RVing Guide to the National Parks?
Basically, the solution that we went in search of was one resource that you could look at all the campgrounds in the national park system that can accommodate RVs of various sizes. And otherwise, you're stuck with going through theoretically 423 units of the park system, or if you just want to focus on quote unquote national parks, 63 units. But that still requires going to 63 different websites and then drilling down to the camping page and then searching here and searching there. And so we figured that, there's a real opportunity here to solve that problem by creating one document. In this case, it's a 282 page ebook or PDF, if you want to get that version, that provides all that information on, I believe, over 270 campgrounds in the 70 plus units of the park system that provide camping for RVs, that have campgrounds that will accommodate RVs. And it just seemed like a no-brainer, and to be able to create a document, and this is where technology really comes in great. You can go to the table of contents and see the park that you want and click on that park name, and it'll take you right to that chapter in the book. You won't have to flip through pages or whatnot. But and really provide that information that we think that RVers need. I mean, is there Wi-Fi there? Are there dump stations there? Are there full hookups there? Is there a camp store nearby? If you live at sea level, what's the elevation of the campground I'm going to? Am I going to have trouble breathing or acclimating? How big is my RV? Is there a site in that campground that will accommodate my RV? What about ADA accessibility? And so we try to provide all that information in one easy to use document, and that's the short and the long of it.
So I'm looking at at Acadia, since it's first, and you've got some of the things that I wouldn't have thought about putting together something like this. What are the generator hours? Do they allow generators at all? What are the generator hours? What are the quiet hours? Some people might not want to arrive during quiet hours. Do they have toilets? Do they have flush toilets? Are they pit toilets? Are they open seasonally, or are they open all year? Showers? What's the cell reception like? And then you've got sort of like a great important notes section where here at the Blackwoods campground at Acadia, RVs not to exceed 11 foot high. There's thick, low tree canopy. That's something that you can find when you've dug through the website, but that's really important information to know. That's virtually every fifth wheel in most Class A motorhomes are not going to want to use those campgrounds. So I think it's really smart how you've laid this out in a really easy to digest way.
Well, thanks. And really, I've got to give a big hand to my co-author on this, Renee Aguadano, who, along with her husband, Jim, they've been full-time RVers like you for 7 or 8 years now. And they were actually up in Acadia once when they saw an RVer in front of her. The guy actually got on top of the roof of his fifth wheel with a bow saw to cut down the limbs that they're hanging up on his rig. One other thing that I enjoyed, for each park, we provide an introduction that kind of gives you an overview of the park itself and what people can expect there. And then we toss in, Traveler's Choice 4. And, you mentioned the Acadia chapter and, hiking, obviously, tide pooling, if it's your first time in the coastal areas of the national park system, what's tide pooling, going down along the shoreline at low tide and seeing what animals have been left behind, biking, the carriage roads in Acadia, just wonderful, paddling, of course, and birding. So we try and do that for every unit or every chapter to give people an expectation of what they might expect when they get to that park or whether they want to go to that park at all.
So it is an ebook only. Do you have any plans for it to be published in print at all?
No. In short, no. I struggle to get my head around the financial logistics of that. We'll see how it goes, and maybe a publisher will approach us and say, "Hey, this would be a great project to collaborate on." One thing we are going to do is create an app for the second edition, and that's another thing. We plan to do an annual update because obviously park fees might change. There might be, who knows, there might be new campgrounds to add to the book. But also, we view it as a living document in that, National Parks Traveler, we're a daily web magazine that provides a hybridization of daily news as well as feature stories. And we've got RV content on there, and we weave that RV content into this ebook. So, along with getting the nuts and bolts of the campgrounds in the national park, there'll be some additional material that hopefully is helpful to RVers. For instance, I've written a piece on RVing arches in Canyonlands National Park, and here's where you can go, and this is what you should know, and these are some of the great places you should see in the parks. I mean, obviously, I think somebody who's got their heart set on visiting Sequoia National Park needs to know that the General's Highway is not the best place to pull an RV, pull a fifth wheel. So we hope by doing annual updates, there'll be not only up-to-date financial information and any logistical information that changes, but a whole new section of content, park-specific content that will benefit the RVer out there.
Well, I do love, too, that the book begins with a whole lot of sort of general overall tips and thoughts and ideas about RVing in national parks, because I think there is a barrier there for a lot of people where they don't know what they're getting into if they've never done it before. You're not working with a corporate business that is out to do hospitality. You're pulling into often a more rugged area. There are rangers and camp hosts, and people don't know what all that sort of stuff means when they first get into this. And I think it's really helpful, conveniently, easily laid out. And when you buy the book, you're supporting National Parks Traveler. You guys are a great resource. Tell us a little bit about the creation and the operations of National Parks Traveler, which is a wonderful nonprofit bringing all this information about national parks to Americans.
The establishment date, to use Park Service vernacular, goes back to August of 2005. And I was a freelance writer. I had recently written America's National Parks for Dummies, truth be told. Fabulous book, fabulous. But I was constantly searching for topics I could pitch to magazines, not just in the realm of national parks, but in environmental issues, wildlife issues, public lands issues. And so I figured, this was the advent of the blogging world out there. And by creating a blog, it would force me to search for topics to put on that blog. And at the same time, I could use those ideas to pitch to magazines. And not too long after I started that, the magazine world kind of cratered a little bit. The .com boom was underway. Magazines were either scaling back their staffing and the pages or going going out of business completely. At the same time, the readership of the Traveler was increasing. I remember the first week that I had launched it, I had like 400 readers, which I thought was phenomenal because I didn't advertise it. There was no marketing at all. It was just word of mouth and luck of the draw. And today, 400 might be a good hour readership. We reach roughly 3 million readers and listeners a year. I transitioned the for-profit National Parks Traveler into a nonprofit in 2016, largely because, as I alluded to earlier, I'm not getting any younger. Eventually, I do expect I will retire if I don't die at my keyboard. And I believe enough in the mission about writing about national parks and protected areas, not just here in the United States, but globally, because there are issues with national parks globally, that there's plenty of content to focus on in that realm. I mean, I had been approached by businesses that, hey, let's merge and, we can add national forests and BLM lands and state forests and city parks. And I just thought that would dilute the content that I thought was so valuable out there. And as you well know, Jason, there are plenty of stories to tell from the national parks, and not just stories of rainstorms or flooding that really wreaked havoc with the northern half of Yellowstone National Park, but stories of wonderment and great history and great recreational adventures to be had out there. And so we transitioned to a nonprofit in 2016, 501c3. And that's what we do, a nonprofit news organization. And we do weekly podcasts, and we've done over 180 shows since February of 2019, and we've seen almost 450,000 downloads. So there's an appetite for content on national parks, and we try and realizing that different generations consume news in different fashions. I mean, I like a good magazine or a book to flip through the pages or dog ear the pages or underline things. Other people like to read online. Lots of people like to consume their content via podcast. And so the one realm we really haven't gotten into is the printed version of National Parks Traveler. And just trying to think of the logistics there, Jason. I mean, there was 300 million visitors to the national park system last year. There's 423 units. How many copies do you print? How do you deliver them? How do you convince the gift shops to carry those magazines? It's just daunting.
It is, and the world is certainly moving away from that as well. So, tell us about where people can get the book.
Well, nationalparkstraveler.org. If you go to the homepage and on the menu bar, you'll see a button for Your National Parks. And if you click on that, the very top drop-down menu is the Traveler Collection Apparel and Gear. And to try and raise revenues for for National Parks Traveler, we do sell National Parks Traveler branded merchandise, sleeve T-shirts and sweatshirts and whatnot. And we encourage people to take a look at that because all the proceeds do go to National Parks Traveler. But if you go there, you'll find the Essential RVing Guide, and you can either purchase an EPUB version to download to your Kindle or other tablet. We also have a PDF version if you like that instead. And as I mentioned, we hope to transition to an app for the next edition coming out early next year, just because lots of people are familiar with apps and know how to find an app on their cell phone as opposed to where did I put that PDF?
Well, we'll also link directly to the website and to the book as well in the description for this episode. Kurt, it was always a joy to talk to you about national parks. Thanks so much for coming on RV Miles.
Jason, it's lots of fun talking, and I look forward to hooking up with you down the road.
Looking for a one-stop shop for a variety of RV products and replacement parts? eTrailer.com has you covered with a variety of RV items, including towing options, interior accessories, replacement parts, storage, and more. But it doesn't stop with RVs. eTrailer.com even offers automobile accessories, sports activities, recreation, and more. If you need it, they've got it. Shop online from the comfort of your home and receive free shipping in the lower 48 for purchases over $99. Head over to etrailer.com/RVmiles to start shopping today. That's etrailer.com/RVmiles.
We are back, and our thanks to Kurt for joining us for that really insightful conversation between the two of you. I'm glad you guys had a chance to talk. And then also, I'm thrilled by that PDF that they put out, because I know just for us as travelers, it's already saved. It's an incredible resource for RVers.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate him taking the time to come on the show and share all of his knowledge. All right, it's time to check the level of our tanks. Mr. Jason, what is in your black tank this week?
Oh, all the terrible flooding that's been happening
Oh, my
in
goodness.
Kentucky and St. Louis. The natural disasters seem to be so common right now. People are dealing with lots and lots of smoke and fire in the West right now. But these floods have been pretty awful. I read something the other day that in Kentucky there was a museum that was just full of records of Appalachian history. And their records room was like they're scraping mud off the walls 6 feet high.
No.
Everything was totally buried, and I'm sure most of it is ruined. And it's of course, that is nothing compared to the people that have lost their lives. And it's rough. So there's that in Kentucky, and then in the sort of St. Louis area of Missouri, there's been a lot of flooding as well.
Yeah, we had some friends who are there working on a show, and everything got a little crazy for them for a while.
I think it's important to remember too that campgrounds are often in areas that get flooded quickly. The Greenbrier campground in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which we've stayed at, dealt with some flooding recently and had cars that were like up in trees after the flooding went down. You really need to kind of know what's going on with the weather. There's flash flood warnings. If you're near water, be really careful about that stuff.
Yeah, please just stay vigilant. Everyone stay aware. There's several weather resource apps. We will link to the show notes in the description, maybe a few that we recommend and use. But whether you're in an RV or you're in your home, just please be aware weather and, natural disasters, they're here to stay. And so we need to, and I mean here to stay as in elevated, here to stay. And it's really important that we stay really mindful and vigilant. All right, Jason, what is in your fresh tank this week?
Well, thankfully, fuel prices continue to drop.
Ooh, we're going here. All right.
Gas prices are down almost 80 cents now from the high like a month and a half ago. And they're still high, don't get me wrong, but it is nice to not be paying as much as we were before.
Yeah.
And here where we are right now, we're on the Iowa-Illinois border, and it's like
we go to Iowa.
It's like another 60 cent savings to cross over into Iowa.
Not only do we go to Iowa, but we go to Iowa Costco. And one of the attendants at Costco yesterday when I was filling up was like, "That's a gas truck?" I said, "It sure is." And he goes, "Do you have to put like super unleaded in it?" I go, "Nope. I just put the regular old unleaded." And he was like, wow, that's so affordable. And I said, yeah, we're really thankful right now to have a gas truck.
Diesel's coming down too, but nowhere near as much as gasoline. But it is nice to be paying like $3.65 over at that Costco.
Excuse me. $3.44.
$3.44.
I was doing a happy dance because that got us on the lower end of $100.
I know a couple of years ago that was expensive. It is really nice on the pocketbooks to be reduced a bit.
Looking forward to those Missouri prices when we get into town next week. That'll be nice too.
All right, Abby, what is in your black tank this week?
So my black tank is me, this weird thing I've had going on with my finger. A few nights ago, I was out playing football with Ethan, just tossing the ball around. And I guess somehow I injured it. I don't know if he threw it and I went to go grab it. Maybe it hit my middle finger too hard or something. I don't know. But I get done. I look at it. It's swollen. It's like 2 times the size. Doesn't hurt. It's just swollen. And I look at Jason and I'm like, oh, my finger is swollen. That's weird. We go about our evening. We go to the baseball game. I don't think anything of it. Go about my day the next day. I'm out at lunch that afternoon with Ethan. And I look down at my finger and it is completely black and blue, almost like it has frostbite. And I'm like, whoa, what in the world? And then the next thing I know, the whole finger starts tingling. Like there's no blood is getting to the fingertip at all. I start to not be able to feel it. And I'm like, this is weird. I call Jason, I FaceTime him and I'm like, does this look strange to you? And he's like, whoa, you need to go to the ER. What is that? And I'm like, really? You think so?
Yeah, I thought you had like some sort of disease and it was going to fall off.
I could pound it. I could pound on it. And there's no pain. The finger didn't hurt. If I had bruised it, sprained it, broken it, or anything, you would think that it would have hurt. I was squeezing it, pulling on it, no pain.
Well, it's clearly not a bruise because it's
it's weird.
It's still
It's weird. So I go to the ER. I wait for when it's all said and done. I was there for 6 hours. Nobody knows. They were so baffled by me. They're like, it really doesn't hurt. I'm like, no, they're squeezing it. They're pulling on it. They're like, it doesn't hurt you? I'm like, no, this doesn't hurt. And yet it looks like it's about to fall off. And it's tingling, like there's no circulation. So they're like, we don't know. We're going to put a compression wrap on it. And if it doesn't get better, you should come back. Maybe follow up with your doctor. Maybe you caught the ball and you busted some blood vessels and there, all these things. 3 or 4 different doctors came in to look at me and they were all baffled. Nobody could figure it out. So I just left. I came home and it continues to tingle. It continues to be weird. It's getting better, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, I'm sitting here squeezing it and pulling on it and there's no pain, but it's a weird, funky color. And I'm telling you, I don't know what it is with us and odd medical things.
You get them whenever we're here.
I thought everyone was like, you're going to lose that finger. And I was like, what are you talking about? It doesn't even hurt. So I
thought it was like dying on you or something.
It's very strange. I don't know. I should probably follow up with my provider. Who knows? I could have something weird going on. I don't know. Maybe there's some flesh-eating parasite in there. I don't know. Whatever.
I think it was you're not getting oxygenated blood
Probably.
to your finger for whatever reason. That's weird, but
it'll get better.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. But, again, it's just 6 hours of my day, a whole day's worth of work lost so that I could baffle the ER doctors with a weird looking finger.
All right, what's in your fresh tank this week?
So my fresh tank also goes to the finger situation, if that's what we want to call it. To the ER visit. Let's call it the ER visit.
I mean, how perfect is that? If it was black, you can give people the middle finger. It is black, and they'd be like,
look at. I won't do it here, but look at my finger. Isn't that weird? So they were very, very busy there, and it was because I was sitting for so long. I was kind of privy to watching not only the front desk who checks you in, but then the triage nurse and how everyone was coming in, and they were dealing with, people are sick, they're hurting. Everyone's need is greater than the person in front of them. In some respects, they feel that it is. And they field an incredible amount of not only repetitive and redundant, how much longer is it going to be? I'm very, sort of angry individuals, but they also do it, and they did it the whole time with compassion. They did it with, we're so sorry that you're having to wait. We understand, people kept leaving and being really angry at them because they were leaving and they were tired of waiting. And I just remember I walked in and I knew it was going to be a wait the minute I walked in. And there's this thing I've been trying to do lately that I actually learned from my sister-in-law, Mai, and her and I were talking, and I see her do this all the time, and I just think it's such a wonderful thing. It's when she's talking to someone or when she's leaving a situation and she'll say, thank you, but instead of saying, thank you, I appreciate it, the word it, she says, thank you, I appreciate you. And the flip from the word it to you is incredibly powerful, because it puts it back on the person that is helping you, that is taking the time to give service in whatever capacity. And I thought that was really beautiful that she does that, and I saw how people reacted to it. So I've been trying to be more mindful of that when I talk to someone. So this woman's checking me in, And it's becoming second nature now. And I get done and, I get my paperwork and she puts my bracelet on and I said, thank you. I said, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I just stood up and walked away and she went, thank you. And then she went, thank you. Because she registered that I said you. And I remembered hearing that and I thought, oh, this woman has gone all day long with doing her best to be sympathetic and empathetic to people. And she probably hasn't had that sort of like reciprocation. So I'm standing over because Ethan is still with me before my mother-in-law came to get him. And he's standing there with me. He's sitting down at the windowsill and I'm standing next to him and I'm just on my phone and doing nothing. And the next thing I know, the woman comes over and she has a chair for me and she says, here, take this chair so you can sit down. And I thought, this is how it works. This is the domino effect. Like, my kindness to her resulted in another kindness, which will result in another kindness, and we pay it forward. And I thought, that was the kind of my beginning of my experience at the ER. And so it made sitting there for the next 5 hours for me, like, I never was grumpy.
Yeah.
Because I saw these people and I saw just how hard they were working. So, my fresh tank is for all the healthcare providers, especially those in the ER who are on the front line of people who want that care and they want it right now. They're doing really hard work and they're understaffed. And, the next time you find yourself there, just try to lift them up because they might have to save your life later. Thankfully they let me keep my finger. So, that was also a positive of the evening.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode.
That's it. Thank you so much for joining us this week. As always, if you're finding value in the content that RV Miles provides, would you please take a moment to share it with your circle? Would you please take a moment to pay it forward? We would so appreciate that. Ways that you can do that is by sharing this episode or going over to one of our social media accounts and following us. So that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and liking the content that's there, or leaving a review for us on your podcast app, wherever you are listening to this show. All of that helps put RV Miles in front of a brand new group of listeners, and that means the world to us. So thank you so much. If you want to connect with Jason and I, you know where to find us. We are in the RV Miles Facebook group, along with about 12,000 other friends.
You can also leave a comment on this episode on the YouTube video.
Absolutely. We like to chat with you over there as well. So, all right. Thank you all so much. Please stay safe. Please be aware of the weather in your area and keep logging those RV miles.
Hi, everybody.